Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Blue Hawk. All this week we've been talking, dissecting, decompiling, deconstructing, I guess, the original Declaration of Independence. More than 200 years old now, written in a language that was very precise, very articulate, very intelligent, and of course, therefore, you and I can barely understand it. Because 100 years ago, our masters decided that the United States did not need intelligent, well-educated, well-read people. The United States needed working units. A working unit, of course, is a part of a machine. It's an asset. It's a resource. It is a human resource, which is where, of course, the concept of human resources came from. It came about as a way for our masters to catalog their assets, all of their assets. The Jesuit order, a few hundred years ago, actually cataloged the entire world for their masters at the time, which of course is still the Vatican. The Jesuit order, the oldest and most deadly spy agency that we know of. The CIA is actually based on the Jesuit order. Our masters have an obsession, of course, with control, and they need to control everything. It's, I guess when you have no soul, you have a lot of free time on your hands. So anyway, we're going to continue this evening with the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, which is what the Declaration of Independence was originally called. This will be part 5. We're taking this very, very slowly for a couple of reasons. One, of course, is the language this is written in, as I said, is over 200 years old, and it was written by people with a tremendous knowledge, a tremendous intellect, wonderful education, which you and I do not share with them. And so we're just going to break this down very, very slowly. It's the only way we can actually understand it. Plus, if I try to do the whole thing at one go, I'd just end up crying. The atrocity of the whole thing, that the gift that our mothers and fathers left us 200 years ago, we've just spit on. And what they meant this country to be and what we've let it become are so totally different. It really is heartbreaking. But let's give it another try. This is Declaration of Independence, Part 5. He, George III, King of England at the time, he has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretend legislation. What this basically means is George III, our king at the time, 200 years ago, his descendants, George IV, old King George Bush, old George Bush, who was George IV, and little George Bush, the grotesque drunken idiot, was George V, if you're keeping track of our English rulers. George III, 200 years ago, was imposing upon us laws and restrictions that had nothing to do with our laws. We didn't vote them in. He simply pressed his will on us and pretended that it was legislation. Exactly what our masters are doing to us today. The Patriot Act, TSA at the airports, excuse me, all these pretend laws, which we are just forced literally at gunpoint to accept. Now, the fact that there are 300 million of us, most of us are armed, and just a small handful of our masters who are gutless, spineless cowards, how they manage to bully 300 million of us into this is still slightly beyond my simple ability to comprehend. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America continues. For quartering large bodies of armed troops amongst us, for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. This is basically saying that King George III back in England was putting armed foreign troops into our cities and making us house them and feed them, clothe them. he was also protecting them from any atrocities that they would commit against us, which is exactly what our masters are doing today. Our masters today are bringing foreigners in from other countries all over the world and putting them in American uniforms and giving them, in exchange for serving in the military of the United States of America, citizenship. Our masters are not a bright people. They're not a creative people. Their strength is in terror and fear and hatred, not creativity. So 200 years later, our current masters are bringing in troops from overseas, putting them, as I say, into American uniforms, and they can pretty much do anything they want to us as U.S. citizens. Nothing new here. The Declaration of Independence continues. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond the seas to be tried for pretend offenses. Now, this is very, very current from my point of view. King George IV, old George Bush, when I was actually trying to do commerce overseas, do sales overseas, at the time the U.S. Commerce Department had wonderful programs for Americans, small little businessmen like myself, to sell our goods and services, products and services overseas. So the U.S. Commerce Department, through the various embassies all over the world, had very wonderful programs. It didn't cost much. You can get your product any country in the world through the local U.S. embassies. George IV, old George Bush, butchered us, cut us off at the kneecaps. He made it impossible for small businessmen like myself to do business overseas. So this, from 200 years ago, really just cuts me right in the guts as I read this. And the next line, for imposing taxes on us without our consent. I believe you have to work from January, February, March, April, May, June, July in the United States. All of that money you make in those first 7 months is stolen from us in taxes. 5 months a year you work for yourself. 7 months a year you work for our masters who take our money, steal it, and give us nothing back. The Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, is a privately owned offshore corporation. It is based in Puerto Rico. It has no right, under the law, to take any money from us for any reason. And yet they do. Amazing. The Declaration of Independence goes on. For depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. This is very current. Since, well, how do I explain this? Habeas corpus was under the law. You physically had to be in the courtroom when charges were brought against you. I think it was one of the Bushes, old George or little idiot George, I can't remember, who overturned that law. So you can be anywhere, and charges can be read against you, and you don't even know it. You don't have the right to hear it. There's also a law they overturned the other day. I never say this right. Kami Papatatus? Kamus? Oh. It's a very ancient law. Actually goes back to ancient Rome. And basically it means that no general of any army can enter the gates of Rome at the head of his own army, which means, bluntly, armed American troops are not allowed in American cities. It's against the law. Well, that was overturned. So now, armed military are now doing the work of the police. See, the military and the police should never be combined for a very, very, very simple reason. Police are to protect and defend the rights of the civilians, to protect and to serve the people of that country. The military kills the enemy. So what on earth qualifies an American military person to be a policeman? Nothing. By definition, the military kills the enemy. They're not police. But today, we have military and paramilitary as police in the United States. The next line, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretend offenses. This is frighteningly current because we have, as American citizens, what we call coffin ships. These are American military ships at sea that are in international waters. Theoretically, when you're in international waters, no laws pertain to you. And so when the CIA, the NSA, the Rockefellers want to beat confessions out of you, as it were, they put you on this coffin ship, take you out into international waters, at which point they can do anything they want to you, because theoretically there are no laws and there are no witnesses. There are witnesses, of course, and someday they'll start coming forward. I hope it's soon. The Declaration of Independence continues. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule in these colonies. This is a paragraph specifically about Canada. I know it's really hard to believe, but Canada actually is not a country. They have no constitution. They're not a country. They are wholly owned by England, by the British Crown, the privately owned corporation. It has very few shareholders. The chief shareholder of the corporation known as the Crown of England is the Queen of England. It's been a while, but the last time I looked, there were something like 147 Commonwealth countries around the world. Now, when England ruled the seas, as it were, it ruled all these countries. The ones that we're familiar with are Canada, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. There are 100 and some plus more countries that today pretend to be independent sovereign nations, but are still owned outright by the Crown of England. Canada, our neighbor to the north, is not a country. I know it's hard to believe. It's not a country. It is owned outright by England. That was what was going to be planned for the United States. Well, today, again, 200 years later, they still have that idea. It's called the North American Union. And they've even printed a currency for us called the Amero. And they've got this funny money currency, the Amero, already printed up. They wish to combine Canada, the United States, and Mexico, owned completely by England. It's on their docket. So here we are, 200 years later, and they're still doing the same things. Nothing is new. The Declaration of Independence goes on, talking about the same thing, basically. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. For suspending our legislatures and declaring themselves invested with powers to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. Well, excuse me, what we just talked about, the North American Union, combining Canada, the United States, and Mexico into one nation under British maritime law, owned outright by the Crown of England, the corporation, controlled completely by the Queen of England. 200 years ago, and they're still thinking in these terms. The Declaration of Independence continues. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. Well, this also is happening today. We look at them as some sort of natural disasters. We've had an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that is beyond biblical proportions and horror. We have attacks on us by weather, by earthquake. Our economy has been wiped out, all by British bankers, all in the order of our masters, controlled from England. Nothing new here. The methodology has changed. Economics, destroy our economy if you have no home, no job. All of your possessions you're robbed of, and you're living in your car if you're lucky on the streets. Hard to fight back at that point, especially when you can barely read or write your own language. Since you have no knowledge of history, you don't know that this has been done before, and it's being done again to you. How would you know? The Declaration of Independence continues. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, I can't pronounce that right, perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworth the head of a civilized nation. Well, we've just covered that. The destruction of our economy, stealing our homes. They don't want the money anymore. Now they just want to destroy us. They're foreclosing on our homes everywhere in the United States. They don't want the money. They don't even want the home. They don't want your belongings. They just want to destroy you. And what easier way to destroy someone than to rob them of their house? Take everything that meant anything to them in the world and simply bulldozing it under. And that's what they're doing. There's one company in California, that's all they do. When your house is foreclosed upon, they don't even try to sell it. They don't even try to collect your belongings and sell them on eBay. They just bulldoze the house down. That's what we're facing here. This is the modern version of old atrocities. The Declaration of Independence continues. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. Well, this gets back to foreign troops being imported onto American soil, given American uniforms, and pretty much allowed to butcher American citizens wholesale. This is worse. This is where Americans are blackmailed into turning on other Americans. Really not much you can add to that. This is today, and yet this is written 200 years ago. Same things are happening today. You and I have been on this planet for 2.5 billion years. It's time for us to grow up. It's time for us to face our masters, these parasites, these soulless things, and say no. And if you can't say no, make the conscious effort as men and women, as human beings. Turn your backs on them and walk away. Because without us, they can't feed themselves. They can't clothe themselves. They can't drive a car. They can't make a pot of coffee. They would starve to death in a kitchen full of food. They're parasites. Why are you letting this happen? Why? We don't need them. They desperately need us. And because of that, they hate us, they fear us, they are terrified of us. If you can stomach it, watch them on television as they rant and rave. Arrogant cowards. They're afraid. And they're afraid of us. In a very ancient culture, the Celtic culture in Ireland many, many years ago, they had the Brehon laws. Just and fair laws that we knew about once, but we seem to have forgotten. And they had a prayer, a greeting, a wish, a farewell for good friends or beloved strangers. And I share it with you. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. for the 2012 fad. This is Charlie Blue Hawk.
The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race. Their black magic captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.